Turn to your scriptures, please. John 13. It was just before Passover. Jesus knew the time had come for him to leave the world and go to the Father. And having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you'll understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part in me." The Lord Simon Peter replied, "Not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus answered, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightfully so, for that's what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. I've mentioned this on occasion, and I really think foot washing should be a sacrament. And but there are too many social hurdles to overcome and too much confusion, and it just, I don't think it would work. Although remember that in our Bible study we were talking about one of the ladies who was saying that the most humbling thing that she's ever done is to have the powerful wash her feet in church services, and that for her to do the same. Be that as it may, I have mentioned previously that society in Palestine during the time of Christ was highly structured, and at the very top of this hierarchy of power would be the Roman military, and I should say the Roman military elites and their entourage of lesser nobles. And this might have been 1.5%, 2% of the population. Then there would have been another grouping of people, the Jewish elites, that would have been the top clergy, and some of the Palestinian sycophants of Rome, and this might have comprised as many as another 5%, something like that. And then a little lower in the pecking order, but still way up there in society, would have been some tax collectors and some enterprising businessmen, in other words, the rich people. All in all, about 10% of the population controlled all of the economy and absolutely all of the political and social structures. This meant that fully 90% of the population was below the poverty line, and of course at the very bottom were lepers, the poor, outcast sinners, and of course women. Now I'd written this sermon and last night and the night before, and I tore it up, and Brenda asked me why, and I said, well, I had a sentence or two in there that I just didn't think would go over too well, and I didn't want to offend anybody. And I still don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to put one of the sentences in. I'll go back. This meant fully 90% of the population was below the poverty line. And then my sentence was, and isn't it interesting, in this civil city that we live in, 30% of the people are below the poverty line. But nobody's talking about that. 30% in this utopian city called Bloomington live in poverty. Well, admittedly, that's better than 90%. Well, in that society in Palestine, there were also an untold number of slaves who tended the needs of the elites. They would fix their food, they would clean their homes, and they would wash the feet of their masters. And if you think about it, this act of washing feet is an outward sign of submission and humiliation. You sit there, and the person has to grovel to clean you. And they have no choice because they're slaves. Now, that's the way it was. We have bootblacks in America that do that. With that said, concerning Thursday of Holy Week, Maundy Thursday, someone asked me, explain that again. The word comes from the French word, I don't know how you pronounce it, you'll have to tell me, mandare or something like that. And it means, I believe, well, I know it means, I don't know how to pronounce it, it means commandment. Is that close enough, Patty? Whatever. No, you're kind of... Well, anyway, whatever the word commandment in French means, that's what it comes from. So you get the word Maundy or commandment Thursday. And Jesus, if you recall, I'm sure you know this, commands his followers to love one another. And this is what he says in John chapter 15. And I'll read from 9 on. This is a very famous passage, and this is the one that usually is selected for Maundy Thursday services. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now, remain in my love. If you obey my commands, now that's commands, not commandments. If you obey my commands, you will remain in my love just as I obeyed my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. And this is my command. Love one another.